Hello and good day. It's good to see you guys back here. Just wanted to bring you guys a video talking about the Luxera's map MRC Open. So we did end the stream a little bit early yesterday after all the casting stuff because the last round was pretty quick and we didn't quite have deck lists open right away. We wanted to get them on Luxera's map since this is the Luxera's map tournament. So making this video to put together our thoughts just as casters, people who watch the whole tournament, and kind of get that towards you guys. So for your information, yesterday we held and hosted the Luxera's Map Open tournament on June 1st, which had 108 registered players. Now, before we get into discussing the top 8 deck lists, I want to give big shout outs to everyone who made this event possible. This is a very large scale event and took quite a bit of manpower to get everything going. So firstly, big thanks to Weebs for the prizing and support of this event, Andy K and the Yeti Gaming tournament server for tournament hosting, as well as making this a ranked event. Also shout out to the judges. So we had Andy, Poro, and Teke. Big shout out to the Luxera's map team for organizing and planning this, and a special shout out to Ver for the custom proxy cards that he gave out as prizing. The bounty players, Cabin, Unsung Crown, and Ver for playing, and if they lost someone, that person would be getting an extra gold pack as part of their prizing. And lastly, to Flown from the Philippines, Lineage Break Cam from Webway Games, and the rest of Serene Balance Productions for casting the tournament so you guys could watch it publicly. All right, so getting right into it, if you haven't been to Luxera's map before, you should come check it out. We do tournament reports, articles. You can see our contributors here. The articles are something that's neat. Just to give you a quick look into it, Limelight did a big blog on his world experience. This is definitely something I would suggest checking out and and reading and seeing if that's something that's neat to you. But let's get right into the tournament reports. So Mercurial Heart, the 2 tournaments we have up so far, the Yeti Webcam Weekly, which was last week, and then we have Luxera's Map Open. So the Luxera's Map Open was interesting. So I had the pleasure of casting this alongside Flown and Lineage Break Cam, and we saw some really interesting games. There were some things that I didn't expect. So the first thing, let's go over the top cut breakdown. So the top cut breakdown here shows that we had 1 Rye, 1 Tonoris, 1 Tristan, and 5 Silvies that made it to top 8. Now, normally, under certain circumstances, you would see Silvie on a top cut break list and you would say, what happened? Who trolled? Who fed wins? Blah, blah, blah. But Silvie has now become a very competitive champion. Silvie Slime Sovereign and the introduction of the Recollection deck has created a competitive deck for Silvie that is a lot more consistent than before. Obviously, before we had Exodia Silvie, where you played Virtus with the Guy's Blessing, but it was very hard to pull off that combo, right? It required either the perfect cards in your hand or some sort of like perfect situation where your opponent was playing something that was really slow that couldn't kill you either. Alongside this, because a lot of these Silvies are playing the Lost Spirit of Slime, they're considered norm elements. So this is another thing that's very strange that we don't normally see, is the element breakdown has an equal amount of norm and fire players. So all of the Silvies here were normal except for 1. That's the first thing to mention. Two. So we had 2 Fire Silvies, and then we had 3 Spirit of Slime Silvies. Now, generally, people consider the Spirit of Slime Silvie to be somewhat less competitive compared to going Wind or Fire or choosing a specific element, because it doesn't enable you all of the staples in those kind of elements, right? So when we look at fire cards, we think of Creative Shock, Cremation Ritual, Hasty Messenger. Stuff like that is not available to you if you're playing Spirit of Slime. However, as a Spirit of Slime player, you do have things like Slime's Blessing, Gather Slimes, Slime Shield, Slime Eruption. So there is a trade-off in both senses. I'm not surprised at all that Rye did really well. To be perfectly honest, I think Rye is a fantastic meta call into, I guess, a field where Silvie and Tristan are so relevant and so popular. With the control Tristan, I feel like Arcane Rye is going to be pretty good. You're able to get a lot of damage out. Even if they have Incapacitate or like Veiling Breeze and such, you're able to output damage in such a way that kind of overtakes those things. When it comes to like the Rye versus Silvie matchup, I think in most cases, Rye is actually pretty favored against Silvie. We did see a huge blowout match where one of the Silvie players just double Arcane slimed a Rye before they could do anything. You know, they played like 3 or 4 Peaceful Reunions, so the entire board state of Silvie was like, if you don't fog me, I'll kill you in 1 turn. But I think that those situations, I want to say, are a little bit more rare. I feel like that's a I drew well, opponent drew badly, versus like this is like a normal, average matchup. But yeah, so going into that, we had 5 Silvies. We had 1 Arcane Rye that went 7-0, so flawless. Big congrats to Jesse. We also had one Tristan and one allies, Tonoris allies. So the Tristan player will go over, this is Glass. I've had the pleasure of actually playing against Glass on this list with my Fire Tristan deck. But I can tell you this deck is pretty good. It has a lot of like allies focused control, so it does use Sadie, but it also has a lot of burst potential. So the burst potential things we're going to see are the Poison Dagger, we're going to see the Scepter of Lumina, but you know, there's some weird things to note here. So Life Essence Amulet is obviously not the most common thing that we see played in an allies deck. Usually we're going to see Baubles, but because he has so much other utility, Life Essence Amulet actually works out quite well. You know, oftentimes people want to trade into the allies, so getting the value of Life Essence Amulet. It also gives you a target for your Fracturize if it's not working out so well for you. But yeah, going into the main deck, we're going to see pretty standard Water Allies package. I mean, we see a Steam Knight split with the Trained Sharpshooters for Dream Fairy equity. We're going to see Gildas and Lurking. The new introduction of Sadie, I think, is pretty neat to this. So Sadie gives you a lot of options for board control. Sadie being able to kill, and then on kill you gain agility, allows her to be returned to your hand, and then gaining a preparation counter that pairs really nicely with the Korazi Trapper, as well as Slice and Dice if that was something that's used in this deck, which it is not. I think Vicious Slice is also a great addition to kind of like a Water Allies control-based board. Vicious Slice, it says class bonus as long as you are attacking a human. Vicious Slice gets +1. But Vicious Slice is able to kill most of the commonly used 3-cost 2/3s on the board. Most of them are humans. Obviously, not all of them are humans. Some of them are automatons. But if we look at Lurking Assailant, Esteem Knight, Trained Sharpshooter, you know, Gildas, like all of these are 3-life, you know, human allies. So they're very easy to deal with Vicious Slice. I think that's a fantastic addition to the deck. Other things that are kind of like a little different here. So Chilling Touch. Chilling Touch is not super common in this deck just because it's usually more allies focused. But Chilling Touch does kind of shift the opponent's... I guess I want to say tempo. I really hate using the word tempo, but it shifts the way that they're trying to like push the game. So like if you're playing against like a Fire Xander or Fire Tristan, and they put one card down and they're going to use that to level up. If you Chilling Touch them, that kind of changes the entire like pacing of the game and really sets things to be different. Other than that, I think everything else here is pretty normal. Nia is pretty standard in, I guess, the Water Xander allies. Water Tristan allies doesn't feel very different to me. Nia being able to gain stealth from the class bonus, but also with the on enter being able to see your opponent's memory and then choosing a card to make it cost 1 more is pretty nice. Most people do whatever the level up is. So like if you're going to Silvie, it'll be like Silvie 1, or like occasionally you'll, you know, do some demon stuff and be like, your GCR now costs one memory cost. But other than that, I think this deck is pretty good. It's pretty standard. Something I would honestly like to see more of in a lot of these tournaments. I think Water Allies is still very relevant, very prevalent, and needs that strong representation because it is really, really good in North America. Going up to Alick. So Alick was one of our world competitors on the Tonoris allies. Actually running a very similar deck to what he was running before, with the addition of things like Backup Charger. So Backup Charger essentially gives his board... In his material deck, he now has 3 GCRs. So we're going to see Bauble, Backup Charger, and Grand Crusader's Ring. There is no Water Resonance Bauble in the main or the side, as he doesn't feel like he necessarily needs it. Maybe wants to keep up more cards in that regard. But other things to note that are being adjusted from MRC, ALC meta is we see the introduction of Charged Mannequin. Now, Charged Mannequin, I think, is a fantastic card for allies, especially with how relevant Backup Charger is. The Charged Mannequin gives you +1 power to Charged Mannequin if you control a power cell. So if you just Backup Chargered, you play Charged Mannequin, your Charged Mannequin is now a 2-cost 2/3, and that is really good because you can leave that power cell up for a long time, and there's not really that many ways for people to interact with it. So like things like Zephyr don't actually work on power cells because it requires it to be a Regalia or an ally. You can fracturize it obviously, but if you fracturize the opponent's power cell, that's just giving them like a permanent +1 in terms of their like influence value. So when I look at that, I think that Charged Mannequin's like fantastic staple in the current meta. It's really, really good just because of how strong Backup Charger is. Other things to note, we see 3 new cards here in the main deck. So Eternal Magistrate, Stifling Trap, and Vigilant Sentry. I don't think it's too much to talk about Stifling Trap. Everyone knows how fantastic this card is. You don't even need the class bonus to really make it good. The class bonus just allows you to play it from your memory using preparation counters. The wording on Stifling Trap is deal 2 damage to target ally, then negate all on-enter triggers from that ally. So the interesting thing with this is Stifling Trap must hit that ally to stop the on-enter effects. This is relevant because there was a match where there were 2 Wind Allies players, Chiharu and Alick, and they were playing Dream Fairy, Stifling Trap, Zephyr on each other. And what happens if you play Dream Fairy, the on-enter trigger targets, let's say, a Gildas, right? If you, in response to the on-enter trigger, Stifling Trap the Dream Fairy, and in response to the Stifling Trap on the stack, you Zephyr your own Dream Fairy, your Dream Fairy is actually going to get 2 on-enter effects. And the way it's going to resolve is the first on-enter effect is the one that was initially played on the bottom of the stack. And then when your Dream Fairy comes back in end step, it'll pick another target. So you can actually send back 2 units at once and only lock down one of them. So there's a lot of like weird interaction and gameplay involved with Stifling Trap as well as Zephyrs. So I kind of like that that's becoming a very staple card. Not even just in Tristan, but in just win decks in general. Vigilant Sentry, fantastic card. So this is class bonus taunt. It's a 3-cost 2/3. I mean, I think this is just a pretty standard 3-cost 2/3. You could run this even without the class bonus. It's just going to be another win card that allows you to have Imbue. It's going to, you know, pair with like Fairy Whispers or any other like wind focused cards, Veiling Breeze, etc. The last card that Alick's running here that I think is fantastic, and I think a lot of people need to start running this card, is Eternal Magistrate. Eternal Magistrate is a Cleric, Tamer, Automaton. So this means that it pairs with Power Cells, and you can buff it up with them. It is a 2-cost Imbue 2 with a stat line of 1/3. And the really unique aspect of this card that makes it so fantastic is that it says, as long as Eternal Magistrate is imbued, cards can't leave your opponent's material deck unless it's their materialize phase. Now, this is really relevant because there are certain champions that abuse being able to pull cards out of their material deck outside of the material phase. Now, a good example is Diana 1 Lineage Release. A lot of people do not Lineage Release in response to... so Diana 1 Lineage Release, if you were to use it in response to your own materialization, you would have to already be level 2 to make that work. Otherwise, going level 2 doesn't work. So, you know, Lineage Releasing for that gun has to be done either on the next materialization step or just after you kill Eternal Magistrate. Fire Xander, Fire Tristan's a really good example. We often banish 3 cards to pull out Varrock and Soul Knife to activate it in the main phase. We spend a preparation counter to materialize or to activate Mercenary Blade. So Eternal Magistrate is fantastic against those things. It also stops like extra bullets from coming out. It stops Ensoul from working. There's a lot of things that Eternal Magistrate is really good against. It's also good against Incarnate Majesty. So I think that this is a card that is underrepresented, and I think a lot more people should be looking into running this either in their main board or sideboard if they're playing wind cards. Now, moving on to the material deck for Alick, everything's pretty standard here. 2 Rallied Advance, great Guardian card, allows you to utilize the Power Cell buffed up units a lot better. 1 more Veiling Breeze for a little bit more defensive nature, and then, you know, the standard package for material regalia there. So we're going to see Viridian, Tithe, Safeguard, and Quicksilver Grail. Not too much else to talk about. Now that we've gone through the 2 unique decks in the top 8, obviously I want to get to Jesse's Rye list last. I want to go over the Silvie lists. So I want to talk about things that are similar between them and then things that are different. The first thing I want to do is I want to go over the Spirit of Slime decks. So looking at Atka's deck, we're going to see... and I think one of the biggest differences between different Silvie decks is going to be their material deck more than their main board. Their main board will be about the same with a couple slight changes, but the material deck is the most interesting. So there's like a 50-50 between if you run Quicksilver Grail or Grand Crusader's Ring. Grand Crusader's Ring is fantastic. It gives you a card. It's just always good, consistent. But Quicksilver Grail is actually probably Silvie's best Divine Relic. It allows you to activate a bunch of different regalia at fast speeds in response to a lot of things. So a good example is Quicksilver Grail, Stone Scale Band underneath it, right? You banish your Quicksilver Grail in response, or on the on-enter of your Stone Scale Band, you can discard up to 3 ally cards from your hand and or your memory and then draw that many cards. So you can make it look like you have no available interaction and suddenly, damn, Stone Scale Band on the field, I've discarded 3 cards, drew 3 cards, now I have 3 cards in my hand or more, right? Stone Scale Band also gives you the ability to pay 1, rest Stone Scale Band, and then now you're able to activate allies as if they had fast activation. So this is really good if someone like backup chargers, puts all their cards down, and then you say, in response, banish my Quicksilver Grail, Stone Scale Band enters, discard cards. I'm going to pay 1 for my Stone Scale Band, and I'm going to rest it, and I'm going to activate like a Storm Slime so that they can't like negate it with Frostbind or like Cerulean Decree or anything. You have other answers like Quicksilver Grail with the Verdant Scepter. You know, on enter of the Verdant Scepter, you banish a slime ally you control. So if they're trying to kill one of your really buffed up slimes, you just Verdant Scepter to sacrifice it. You banish that, and then, sorry, not sacrifice. You banish that slime, and then you get refinements counters based on that. So you kind of double up on value. You don't take damage directly, and you're able to, you know, get value of your ally dying anyways. So things to talk about when it comes to the decks. I actually didn't see Bestial Frenzy or Academy Guide in a lot of decks, so it's interesting to see that Atka ran both. So we're going to see 4 Academy Guides here, 2 Bestial Frenzies, 2 Smack with Flutes as well, and then in the sideboard, we're going to see Bestial Frenzy, Resolute Stand, Morgans. I think Twilight Slime and Verdant Slime in the sideboard are very, very common. Twilight Slime, there's a couple of unique things about this. So your champion and other slimes you control have Spell Shroud. This is not a unique ally, which means that if you put 2 of them down on the field, they both have Spell Shroud. So the only way to kill them is through either combat damage or if you non-targeting spells. So things like Purge in Flames, Anger the Skies, etc. Like those kind of things will work, but you can't just fireball it outright. So looking at Atka's deck, it's interesting because we see a lot of 1-ofs, and I'm generally not a huge fan of a lot of 1-ofs in a deck, especially when, you know, there's a lot of value of having a bunch of these slimes. It seems that the deck is very focused on the concept of Slime Eruption plus Storm Slime. So anytime you discard slimes, it's going to help set up for Slime Eruption. Slime Eruption will allow you to banish, basically banish more slimes to buff the Storm Slime on enter damage. So Storm Slime on enter says, as a spell, deal damage to target unit equal to the number of slime cards in your banishment. So this isn't just slime allies. That means that Slime Shield, as well as Slime's Blessing and Gather Slimes and stuff will also count towards that. See 1-of Vampiric Slime, 1-of Verdant Slime, 1-of Lustrous Slime. I think these are actually mainly used for King Slime. King Slime value, just having a couple extra options to discard with Baby Red Slime or to just get rid of in banishment. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of running so many 1 and 2-ofs, but obviously they did well. 7th place. Looking at Picklesword's list, Picklesword runs a little bit different in the main. So Nullifying Lantern in the main means most likely no King Slime because it does counter the King Slime, so we don't see that. Terrafring I think in the main is good because it means that he's kind of respecting the concept of allies clearing his slimes, and he wants to be able to create a strong board state. And then Covenant of Thorns. Covenant of Thorns I think is good because he's not running Safeguard Amulet. So Covenant of Thorns is kind of like a pseudo spell protection for at least like 1 large spell. So if you attach a Covenant of Thorns to, let's say, like a 6/6 Ethereal Slime, they have to kill the Ethereal Slime. But, you know, Ethereal Slime prevents all non-combat damage. So it's very difficult to kind of get around those interactions. Looking at the main deck, though, this is something that I really like to see, mostly 4-ofs, right? We're going to see 3 Slime Shields, 3 Vampiric Slimes, and 2 Verdant Slimes. I think that's fine because a lot of the really high-end, like, Advanced Element Slimes, you don't actually need that many of them. I think the only ones you'd probably want to run 4 of are, like, Storm Slime, Ethereal Slime, maybe Vampiric Slime if that's kind of your goal, your end goal. But overall, having the availability to have more Advanced Element Slimes and more options is good. You don't want to limit yourself, right? Because if you open a hand with like 6-7 Advanced Element Slimes, like it's just very, very painful. I really like the addition of Escape the Wreckage and Gaia's Songbird here. So Escape the Wreckage paired with things like Baby Gray Slime means that you're able to replay it for additional value. So Baby Gray Slime says on enter, if you reveal 2 slime cards from your hand or memory, draw a card. So it recycles itself the first time. If you Escape the Wreckage with it, Escape the Wreckage recycles itself by drawing a card into memory, and then you can Baby Gray Slime again. So getting more cycle out of that is really fantastic. Being able to escape the wreckage, I think a baby green slime is also really good because baby green slime allows you to fast activate and then on enter suppress target item or weapon. So the thing with baby green slime is that it combos with a lot of stuff. So you can combo it with Stone Scale Band. You'd fast activate, suppress Stone Scale Band. On enter, you can cycle more cards out of your memory or hand. You can also use it to counter other people's Terrafrings. So end step, they have a Terrafring. You can fast activate your baby green slime to suppress their Terrafring. It won't return until the beginning of the next end phase. But there are a lot of like unique interactions with that. I think baby green slime is actually totally underrated. Fantastic card. But the last thing in Picklesword's deck that I'm a really big fan of is Gaia Songbird. So Gaia Songbird says on enter, reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal a beast ally card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your deck in any random order. Now, because this is a 1-cost card, it actually allows you to filter and find an advanced element slime if you're struggling to find that early on, because you can just play it for free on your Silvie level of turn. So if you only have 2 cards, you can play Gaia Songbird. You can then look for that beast, and then obviously between beasts and animals have no pride, beasts have pride. So when you're like looking for the reveals, you're going to find one of these advanced element cards, right? You're going to find the Vampiric Slime, the Verdant Slime, the Ethereal Slime, or the Storm Slime. The last thing in his deck that's like a little different from others, and I'm not 100% sure if I like it, I think it's good overall because it does recycle itself, is Blissful Calling. The Blissful Calling allows you to look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You can then reveal an animal or beast card from them and put it into your hand, and then the rest of them must go on the bottom of your deck in any order. The reason I'm not like a huge fan of this is you could bottom your dungeon guides. You could bottom multiple of a card that you may really want to have, like 2 Escape the Wreckage, 3 Escape the Wreckage. You could bottom like 2 Forest Cakes, Escape the Wreckage, and a dungeon guide, and that would just be pretty unfortunate. But at the same time, it does let you like filter through 5 cards, so it's not the worst in any regard. Now, looking at his sideboard, I'm actually a really big fan of the sideboard. I think Incapacitate sideboard is fantastic. Incapacitate sideboard allows you to deal with a lot of really strong level 3 decks, because a lot of them are willing to put all of their cards down to make an action or do something, and in response, you incapacitate it, can really, really stop like that rolling momentum that they're trying to gain. I'm also a really big fan of Reprogram. If Reprogram isn't used on an automaton, it still targets 1 ally with a -1 power until end of turn. So it's kind of like a fast floating fast cure for 1, because you're recovering 1 by not taking 1 damage, right? Whereas when it comes to using fast cure, the only way that you recover is if your influence is lower than your opponent's. So looking at the last Spirit of Slime, we're going to see Mewkiss. Now, Mewkiss's deck is really interesting to me because he runs 6 Terra cards, not including the champion in his main material deck, and that's a lot. That means that outside of like turboing to level 3, your only real other materialization, Quicksilver Grail with something underneath it, and maybe a Beast Bondiers. But I feel like in a lot of cases, you're kind of you have the Beast Bondiers there, so you can discard it with your Ethereal Slime. After watching Mewkiss play, this deck was very, very focused on turboing to 3, accruing value by protecting like holding board state with like an Ethereal Slime. Otherwise, it was just Storm Slime, Storm Slime, Storm Slime, Storm Slime, Storm Slime, Storm Slime, Arcane Blast, Arcane Blast, Arcane Blast. Yeah, it's my bad. I mixed up Storm Slime and Rye. But yeah, conceptually, that was really just what this deck was. This deck was, I play a lot of Storm Slime. I Arcane Blast you in the face for whatever variable number of slime cards I have in banishment. And then when you inevitably kill my Storm Slime, I will banish 2 cards at random from my memory and then do it again. Look at the sideboard, Bestial Frenzies. Bestial Frenzy pairs in really nicely with the Vampiric Slime. Being able to on-hit recover X, where X is the amount of damage dealt. Pretty good. You're able to just cleave for like 5, hit 3 things, recover 15. Even if you cleave for 2 and, or cleave 2 units and, you have, let's say, 1 buff counter. Your Vampiric Slime is a 3/3. It's now a 4/3 with Bestial Frenzy with cleave. Healing 8 is a lot, right? People don't make it sound like a lot, but recovering 8 is a lot of damage. Dealing 8 generally requires like 2 3-cost cards, which means you need an 8-card hand or more, right? Sometimes you can do it with less if you already have things on the field, but overall, fogging 8 damage is huge. So Bestial Frenzy, Vampiric Slime, fantastic sideboard options. Really big fan. All right, time to get into it. So Joel and Conman, Fire Terra Silvie. Big fan of Fire Silvie. I think that Fire Spirit on Silvie is very, very good. And the reason is because it enables all of those really good fire cards we talked about earlier, right? So we're going to see Creative Shock, Cremation Ritual, Increasing Danger, but nothing else. So those are the only ones we're seeing. We actually do see the addition of Young Beast Bonder. Not a super popular card in the Silvie decks, but overall not bad. So this says, on enter, put a buff counter on another target ally you control. If that ally is a beast, you can put 2 buff counters on it, and this card is also Floating Memory. So it allows you to discard it with Creative Shock, discard it with your Baby Red Slimes, and still gain value out of that. Looking at the sideboard, pretty standard things: Safeguard Amulets, Viridian Trinket, Twilight Slimes, Verdant Slimes. Verdant Slimes are great because if you can destroy a target Regalia with memory cost 0 on enter. So it lets you deal with things like a Safeguard Amulet on the field, Poison Dagger, you know, if they have a Nullifying Lantern, or even a Terrafring. But yeah, I'm a big fan. This is a pretty standard fire deck, just, you know, Silvie version. Like the pretty standard fire package: Creative Shock, Cremation Ritual, Increasing Danger. Baby Red Slime is basically Hasty Messenger. It doesn't allow you to draw into hand, but it does get more damage output, so it's a little bit more of an aggressive version. And then Baby Gray Slime being able to recycle itself is a very, very good setup with this. Escape the Wreckage, I think, is also really nice, just because you can utilize the on leave of Slime King, as well as you can utilize... I mean, you can utilize just protection in general. So if you don't have like a lot of buff counters or something, Escape the Wreckaging it can be really valuable. Even just ETW on Baby Gray Slime is good because intercept. So you intercept, and then before damage, you escape the wreckage, so your Baby Gray Slime doesn't die, but they also can't attack your champion. Bunch of neat value there. Looking at the material deck, I mean, Guy's Blessing is common in all the decks. It allows you to banish to set up for Storm Slime, but it also lets you look at the top card of your deck at all times. And a lot of people kind of underestimate the value of being able to look at the top card of your deck and play it from there. You basically have one extra card at most times. And then everything else is pretty standard: Verdant Scepter, Stone Scale Band, Covenant of Thorns. Horn of Beast Calling is interesting. Horn of Beast Calling, I think, is a really good card because it's a 1 cost, which means that you can use them. In most cases, you'll want to use a Floating Memory to kind of materialize this. But the reason it's good is because the class bonus is draw a card. So you can turn your Floating Memory into a +1, and you'll also be able to play your next beast for 3 less cost. So that means if you're playing Advanced Element Slimes, they're usually going to be free. I think all of them are 3 or less. Most of them are 2, and then I think King Slime and Twilight Slime are the only ones that are 3 cost. Maybe Vampiric Slime. Vampiric Slime might also be a 3 cost. No, Vampiric Slime is also a 2 cost. So it's a pretty nice card to have. Horn of Beast Calling. If you're not running it in the main, I would definitely suggest at least running it in the side. And then moving on to Khan's deck. So Khan's deck's pretty... It's like a mix of everything. So we're going to see GCR instead of the Quicksilver Grail. We see a backup charger, so he's going to have 2 GCRs in this case. And then Pause to give him True Sight. And then when we look at the rest of the deck, everything else here is pretty common except for Owl Familiar. Owl Familiar is a bit weird. 1 cost on Enter Glimpse 2. Seems okay, but I feel like there are better cards in this slot. Overall, though, the deck is built well. It's pretty standard. Reprogram. The 1 of Turbocharge I'm a fan of. I think 1 of Turbocharge when you're running backup charger is kind of sick. If you hit it, you get insane value. If you don't hit it, whatever, you just put it down for memory costs. And then looking at the sideboard, we're basically looking at all the slime decks as slight variations of each other. Everyone either runs like different ratios, or they just run different cards inside versus main. But overall, they're all pretty similar. So moving on to the final deck, we see Fire Arcane Rye. This is running something that I think is fantastic. It is running the Fragmented Spirit of Fire. I'm a really big fan of Fragmented Spirit of Fire. I liked Serene Spirit before because it allowed you to glimpse. But the problem with it for me was that you had to lineage release for recovery, and there was no way to get that extra influence you were always looking for. With Fragmented Spirit of Fire, instead of the lineage release for recovery, you are now able to draw a card once you hit level 3. And I think that this is the card I've been looking for in Grand Archive. It's the card that I think is fantastic. Once you get to Rye Stormseer, you can now draw a card with your Fragmented Spirit of Fire. You can also, with your Spirit Shard token, which you can also just leave there. And with Rye specifically, being able to leave it there and have it as an unconditional draw once you hit 3 is fantastic. Because it means that you can Scry the Skies, stack your deck, and if you don't have Enlightenment counters, you can crack it to draw that card. if you need it for your advent or anything like that, being able to draw that card when you want makes it fantastic. So we're going to see a pretty standard main deck here, all of the standard fog cards. There's actually I don't think there's any MRC cards in here. No like incapacitates or anything. Just the standard Arcane, Fire Rye, Fog, 2 Peacefuls, 4 Resolute Stands, 2 Vanish from Sights. Not much to say. It's a fantastic deck. We saw it a lot at Worlds. Sean played it. Duck Hats played it with the Gloamspire Black Market. I think overall it's just a fantastic deck. Very consistent, very chill and comfortable to play. Looking at the sideboard, with the sideboard changes for cards, it's actually very interesting because Rye doesn't need as many material deck cards in the sideboard, so we're actually just going to see 15 main deck cards. 1 extra Advent, Anger, the Disintegrates allow you to deal with a lot of big allies or Regalia, so Disintegrate being really effective into basically any like really big slime is great. It's also very good against Geldis if you're running those big spooky Geldis. And then just the standard things, Focus Flames for ally hate if there's a lot of allies coming out, Blanche if you're playing like mirrors or if you're playing against slimes where you need to protect yourself from the Storm Slime, Morgan for the inevitable Luxem matchup, and then 2 more Fogs from Vanish is just pretty standard things overall. I'm a really big fan of Orb of Regret in this deck. I think Orb of Regret is actually really good because it allows you to, like, on top of having Fragmented Spirit for your Glimpse, Orb of Regret is like your second safety net. And it really helps you get exactly what you need to get to level 3. And once you get to level 3, stabilizing isn't very hard. I think between having Vanish from Sight as well as Resolute Stand, you're almost always going to get a good chance at using your Chalice of Blood. So overall, fantastic deck. I am still a bigger fan of Quicksilver Grail over Grand Crusader's Ring just for the controlled banishment with your Tome of Knowledge. But it's not a bad choice to use GCR. Big shout out to everyone. You guys did fantastic. You guys made it a great tournament for me to cast and for me to watch. So really, really appreciated that. I hope to see what you guys bring out in the Mortal Ambition season for the Luxera's Map Invitational. But otherwise, if you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know. Leave any comments below. Happy to discuss deck lists, concepts, etc. But yeah, sorry, this was going to be a pretty short video, but it ended up being really long because I wanted to talk about each of the deck lists more than just talk about, hey, this guy got first place as Rye. Whoa. So thank you for listening to my rambling, and I hope to see you guys soon.